Welcome back to the deep dive. Today I want to take you on a little trip back in time. I want you to picture the year 1998.
Oh, wow. 1998.
Yeah, we are in the deep South, the state of Georgia to be exact. Governor Zell Miller is standing in front of the state legislature. And, usually a budget proposal is the most boring thing on earth.
Charts, graphs, people falling asleep.
Exactly. A lot of droning on about taxes. But Miller does something completely off script. He pulls out a tape recorder.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, is already the most 1998 thing he could possibly do.
Right. The plastic buttons, the loud cassette clunking in. And suddenly he hits play, and the room is just filled with the sound of Beethoven's Ode to Joy.
Oh, that's amazing.
He just stands there, letting the music swell, looking out at this room of confused politicians in cheap suits. He lets it play for a solid minute. Then he clicks it off and asks, "Now don't you feel smarter already?"
I actually remember this vividly. It feels almost like a sketch comedy bit, but it was the kickoff for a massive real-world government program.
It really was. Governor Miller wasn't just vibing up there. He wanted to budget $105,000, and remember that was real money back then, to send every single newborn baby in Georgia home from the hospital with a cassette or CD of classical music.
Wow.
He even had Sony Corporation lined up to donate the recordings. And the track list was serious business, too. Mozart's Eine Kleine Nachtmusik, Vivaldi's Spring, Schubert's Trout Quintet.
It wasn't just Georgia, though. This was a massive cultural moment across the board. Florida actually passed a law requiring state-funded daycare centers to play classical music every single day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And of course, this was the exact era that gave birth to the whole baby Einstein empire.
Oh, absolutely. I think literally every parent I knew had those DVDs in their living room. The assumption was just sort of baked into the culture at that point. If you play Mozart, your kid's IQ goes up.
Right.
It's treated like a magic spell. You press play, and suddenly your toddler is ready for calculus.
And that is the core of what we call the Mozart Effect. The belief that passive listening to complex classical music, specifically Mozart usually, somehow boosts intelligence.
And that right there is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to look at the massive stack of research you've brought in today, from the original papers to the debunking meta-analyses.
We have a lot to get through.
We do. And we're going to answer the big question, did we all buy into a total myth? Does listening to a sonata actually rewire your brain? Or is it just, pleasant background noise?
We have a really interesting stack of sources today to help us figure that out, actually. We're going back to what I call Patient Zero, the original 1993 research paper that started the whole mania.
Okay.
But we also have meta-analyses from 2010, some brand new preliminary data from 2024, and some really fascinating studies from the University of Western Ontario, specifically on music and memory.
So let's just start right at the beginning. Where did this idea even come from? Because I assume Governor Miller didn't just wake up one morning and decide Beethoven was the key to the state's GDP.
No. He was reacting to a study published in the scientific journal Nature in 1993. The researchers were Francis Rauscher, Gordon Shaw, and Catherine Kai. And if there's one thing, literally one thing you take away from this deep dive, it should be this. The study was not performed on babies.
Wait, hold on. The entire industry, Baby Einstein, the hospital tapes, the daycare laws, it's all marketed toward infants. You're saying the original data had nothing to do with kids?
Zero. Completely different demographic. The study was performed on 36 college students.
Okay, so we've got 36 undergrads probably doing it for extra credit or free pizza. What do they actually have them do?
It was a pretty simple setup. They had 3 groups. One group sat in total silence for 10 minutes. One group listened to verbal relaxation instructions, like a guided meditation type of thing.
Right.
And the third group listened to 10 minutes of Mozart Sonata for 2 pianos in D major, specifically K448.
K448. That specific piece seems to come up a lot in the literature. Is there something special about it?
We'll actually get to that later because it does have some unique properties regarding epilepsy. But for this IQ test, it was likely chosen just because it's complex, it's energetic, and highly structured.
Okay.
So after the 10 minutes were up, the students took a specific part of the Stanford Binet IQ test.
And this is important. It wasn't a general how smart are you test, right? Because IQ is a huge bucket.
Exactly. It was specifically spatial temporal reasoning tasks. Think paper folding and cutting.
Walk me through that. What does that look like?
Imagine I show you a piece of paper. I fold it in half, then I fold it again, and then I cut a diamond shape at the corner. Then I ask you, if I unfold this paper, what will the pattern look like?
Oh, geez.
You have to mentally rotate and unfold that object in your mind.
I hate those questions. I
Yeah.
can never visualize it properly.
Most people find them really hard.
Mm.
But here's the kicker. In that specific context, the music helped. The results showed that the students who listened to Mozart scored significantly higher, about 8 or 9 IQ points higher than the ones who sat in silence.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. 8 or 9 points is huge.
It is.
That's the difference between average and bright. That's a full letter grade. If I could boost my IQ by 9 points just by listening to 10 minutes of piano music, I'd never take my headphones off. Why isn't this real? Why aren't we all geniuses?
Because context is everything in science. Rauscher and her team included critical caveats in that paper that the media just completely ignored. First, the effect was temporal spatial only.
Meaning it didn't make the students better at math or writing or logic.
Right, just the paper folding.
So it helps you pack a suitcase efficiently, but it doesn't help you write a thesis.
Essentially, yes. And secondly, and this is the really big one, the effect was incredibly short-term. It lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. So it fades almost immediately.
Completely fades. After that, the students' scores went right back to baseline. Rauscher herself later stated very clearly, "We made no such claim regarding a general increase in intelligence."
But the horse was already out of the barn at that point?
Oh, the horse had left the barn, run a marathon, signed a book deal, and launched a franchise.
This really is a classic case of the game of telephone. We go from a lab with college students folding paper for 10 minutes to a New York Times columnist writing, and this is a real quote from the sources, listening to Mozart actually makes you smarter.
And once the Times says it, it becomes true in the public imagination. That opened the floodgates for commercialization. Enter a man named Don Campbell. He wrote a book called The Mozart Effect in 1997.
I remember seeing that book everywhere. It was on the bestseller lists for ages.
Campbell took that very narrow scientific finding and just blew it up. He claimed music could heal the body, unlock the creative spirit, and, here's the real moneymaker, he recommended specially selected classical music for infants to build their brains.
Even though the original study never tested a single child, it's wild how a narrative just completely takes over.
It really is. But it launched a multi-million-dollar industry. And it wasn't just selling CDs to anxious parents. The sources you found actually mentioned some truly bizarre applications of this.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the research stack today. There was a report about a sewage treatment plant in Germany.
Oh, right.
The chief operator started playing Mozart to the microbes.
To the microbes.
Yes, he genuinely believed the vibrations would penetrate the cells and help the bacteria break down the waste faster.
That is certainly a creative interpretation of the data. I'm going to guess the peer-reviewed data on micromusic appreciation is pretty thin.
Very thin, practically transparent. But it shows how desperate people were to believe in this magic bullet. So while the sewage plants and the governors are buying into this, what was the actual scientific community doing? Surely someone tried to double-check the work.
They did, and that's where the story gets really interesting. This is the scientific rebuttal phase. In 1999, a researcher named Steele tried to replicate the experiment exactly.
And what happened?
Well, in one trial, listening to Mozart produced a 3-point increase. But in another trial, it produced a 4-point decrease.
So basically just random noise.
Essentially. Then you have Christopher Chabris, who conducted a massive meta-analysis also in 1999. He looked at a whole bunch of studies and concluded that any cognitive enhancement is tiny, negligible, really, and definitely doesn't reflect a change in actual IQ.
Right.
But the scientists didn't just want to say it doesn't work. They wanted to figure out why Rauscher got those initial results in the first place.
Because the 36 students did score higher, that data wasn't faked. So what was happening in those 10 minutes?
That leads us to the arousal and mood hypothesis.
Yeah.
The theory is that the Mozart sonata didn't make the students smarter. It just woke up their brains.
So it wasn't the complex structure of the classical music, it was just energy.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's enjoyment arousal. Think about it. Sitting in silence for 10 minutes in a sterile lab is incredibly boring. It dampens your brain's alertness.
Yeah.
You start to zone out. Your dopamine levels drop.
Yeah, you get sluggish.
Right. Then suddenly, listening to an energetic, upbeat piano piece perks you right up.
I see. So you perform better on the test just because you're not half asleep.
Correct. And there's a great study that proves this perfectly. Researchers compared Mozart to a Stephen King story.
A horror story. That seems like the exact opposite of relaxing classical music.
It is. And they found that listening to a passage from a Stephen King audiobook improved the paper folding results just as much as Mozart did, provided the listener actually enjoyed the story.
Oh, wow. So if I'm a huge horror fan, listening of House, it makes me smarter. But if I'm a classical fan, Mozart makes me smarter.
Temporarily, yes.
Yeah.
It's all about engagement. They even tested this by taking that specific Mozart sonata and modifying it. They slowed the tempo way down and changed the major chords to minor chords, making it sound really sad and lethargic.
And what happened to the test scores?
The Mozart effect completely disappeared. The notes were technically the same, but the mood was down, so the brain didn't get that arousal boost.
That makes so much sense. It really demystifies the whole thing. But why did the idea persist for so long if the science was debunking it by the late 90s?
Well, there is a phenomenon in science called publication bias. It's also known as the file drawer problem. In 2010, Jacob Piechnig from the University of Vienna did a massive meta-analysis, and he found something pretty suspicious.
What was it?
Studies that were affiliated with Rauscher's original lab or her colleagues showed effect sizes 3 times higher than studies from other independent labs.
Oof. That implies some serious bias. But can you explain the file drawer problem for us? Because that sounds like a paperwork issue, but I know it's a lot deeper than that.
Sure. Think of it like an influencer on Instagram. You take 50 selfies, but you only post the one where the lighting is perfect and you look great. You delete the other 49.
Right.
Science can unfortunately be similar. If a lab runs an expensive study on music and intelligence and finds absolutely no effect, that's boring. Academic journals don't want to publish a paper that basically says, nothing happened.
It's not a sexy headline.
Exactly. So the researcher sticks that study in a file drawer and never talks about it again.
But if they get a positive result, even a complete fluke, they publish it immediately.
You got it. So when we look at the public record, it looks like music makes you smart because we're only seeing the winning lottery tickets, not the thousands of losing tickets sitting in the trash. When Piechnig and others dug into this, they realized the overall evidence was heavily skewed.
And even now, we're seeing brand new data on this, right?
Yes, preliminary results from 2024 by Mounier at Leeds University are confirming this all over again. They're finding that most of these older studies are what we call underpowered, meaning the sample sizes were just way too small to really trust the math. We're talking negligible practical significance.
Okay, so if I'm sitting at my desk trying to work, putting on Mozart isn't going to turn me into Einstein. That myth is thoroughly busted. But let's pivot to something practical.
Yep.
A lot of us, myself definitely included, listen to music while we work or study. If it doesn't raise my IQ, does it at least help me remember things better?
That is the background music question. And we have a really cool study from the University of Western Ontario by Nguyen and Gran that looked exactly at this.
What did they find out?
They tested recall, recognition, and associative memory under a few different conditions. They used high arousal, music-intense, fast stuff versus low arousal, calm music. And they also split it by positive versus negative mood.
I'm guessing the calm music was better for studying.
You're right. Participants recalled more words when listening to low arousal music compared to the high arousal tracks.
That tracks. It's pretty hard to focus when the music is just screaming at you.
But here's the kicker, and you might not like this. Overall, background music did not improve memory compared to silence. In many cases, silence was actually superior.
Don't tell me that. I have a highly specialized playlist for everything. Lo-fi beats to study to is practically a religion for me.
I know, it hurts to hear. But the explanation makes a lot of biological sense. It's what they call the changing state effect.
Changing state. What does that mean in this context?
Think of your brain as a constant prediction machine. It's always trying to guess what happens next in your environment. Music is full of changes: pitch, tempo, rhythm, lyrics. Even if it's purely instrumental, the acoustic state is constantly changing.
Right.
Your brain has to allocate cognitive resources to process all those auditory changes.
And if I'm trying to study, those are resources I'm stealing away from my actual work.
Exactly. It creates a subtle conflict. If you're trying to memorize a list of vocabulary words or read a complex report, the music is essentially a distraction that your brain has to constantly filter out. Silence allows you to use 100% of your processing power on the task in front of you.
So silence really is golden.
Generally, yes. However, there was one highly nuanced finding that might save your playlists, but it's a bit weird.
I'll take any loophole I can get.
Negative mood music, so sad, low-energy music, actually helped a little bit with word recognition compared to happy music.
Sad music helped. Why would being sad help you study?
The theory is that it physically narrows your attention. High energy or happy music broadens your focus. You look around, you're engaged with the wider world. Sad, low-energy states tend to make us turn inward, and laser focus on minute details. It's a bit grim, but being in a slightly lower mood can make you more highly analytical.
That is fascinating. So if you really need to cram for finals, maybe you put on the breakup ballad playlist instead of the upbeat pop hits.
Or just buy some really good earplugs.
Fair enough. Now, there's one area in our source stack where the Mozart effect seems to actually hold some water, and it's not about IQ or studying at all, it's about physical health, specifically epilepsy.
Yes, this is the K448 effect. This is the one area where that specific sonata we talked about earlier seems to actually do something unique.
What does it do?
According to sources like the British Epilepsy Organization, daily listening to Mozart's Sonata K448 has been shown to reduce the frequency of seizures in individuals with epilepsy.
That is incredible. Is it just that one piece of music, or is it all Mozart?
It seems to be mostly that specific piece. But, and this is easily my favorite fun fact of the day, researchers found one other piece of music that had a remarkably similar effect.
Please tell me it's something totally unexpected.
It is a song by the Greek composer Yanni.
Yanni, the guy with the glorious mustache and the long hair from the 90s PBS specials.
The very same. The track is called Acroyala Standing in Motion.
Why Yanni? I mean, no disrespect to the man's catalog, but he's not usually mentioned in the exact same breath as Mozart in peer-reviewed medical journals.
It turns out that specific track shares a very similar tempo and structural predictability to the Mozart sonata. It's all about the mathematical structure, not the historical genius of the composer per se. The working theory is that the brain finds that highly specific rhythmic pattern soothing in a way that physically dampens the electrical storms associated with seizures.
I love that so much. Yanni and Mozart, neck and neck for medical breakthroughs.
However, I do have to be the buzzkill expert again for a second. A 2023 meta-analysis by Oberleiter and Piechnig argues that even this evidence is a bit shaky.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, they point out that the studies often have very small sample sizes and selective reporting. So while it's definitely promising and fascinating, it's not considered a guaranteed, scientifically robust medical treatment just yet.
Okay, so we've busted the IQ myth. We've learned that studying in silence is probably best. But does this mean music is just useless for our brains? Because that feels wrong. We know musicians are smart people. We know learning music is good for kids.
Oh, it is completely wrong to say music is useless. Music is incredibly powerful for the brain, but there is a massive fundamental difference between passive listening and active training.
You mean learning to play an instrument versus just hitting play on a Spotify playlist?
Exactly. We have sources here from Psychology Today and Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman that explain this beautifully. Music instruction literally changes the physical structure of the brain. It increases the size of the corpus callosum.
That's the bridge between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, right?
Yes. It allows for much better communication between the two sides. There was a study by Lappi and colleagues in 2008 where they trained people to play a sequence of notes on a piano versus just listening to that same sequence.
So one group physically learns to play it, the other just sits and hears it.
Right. And the people who were trained to play the instrument showed much greater cortical plasticity. Their brains actually adapted and changed structure. The listeners, not so much.
And looking back at Rauscher, the original researcher from the 1993 study, didn't she find something similar later on?
She did. And this is the part that often gets completely left out of the story because it doesn't sell quick fix CDs. She did a follow-up study with preschoolers where she gave them actual keyboard lessons, teaching them to actively make the music.
And the results.
Those 3-year-olds scored 30% higher on spatial temporal reasoning than children who just took computer lessons or had no training at all.
30%. That is a massive difference compared to the temporary 8-point bump from just sitting in a chair listening.
It is night and day. Think about what learning to play music actually requires. You're using attention, memory, fine motor skills, emotional regulation, and reading visual notation all at the exact same time. It's a full-body workout for the brain. Listening is just watching someone else exercise.
That's a really great analogy.
You don't get ripped by watching Arnold Schwarzenegger lift weights on TV. You have to lift the weights yourself.
So to wrap this all up, let's go back to those parents in 1998 holding their free Sony cassettes on the way out of the hospital.
The intention was good. We all want the absolute best for our kids. But the science is clear. Mozart won't artificially raise your child's IQ. The effect is mostly just your brain waking up from enjoyment arousal.
And if you really want to study, silence is probably your best bet, unless you specifically want to listen to sad, low-energy music to narrow your focus.
Correct. And I do want to add one very serious warning for parents that came directly from our music therapy sources. There is a strong temptation to blast complex Mozart for premature babies in the NICU because people think it builds the brain faster.
But it doesn't.
For preemies, complex auditory stimulation like a dense symphony can actually be highly detrimental.
Why is that?
It's simply overstimulating. Their tiny developing brains aren't ready to process that level of auditory input yet. It can cause real physiological stress. So please, be careful. More is not always better.
That is a really important point to end on. We always assume putting more culture into our lives is inherently good, but biology has its own strict rules.
Ultimately, music is incredibly valuable for enjoyment, for regulating our moods, and for culture. But it is not a magic pill for intelligence. If you want a smarter brain, you have to do the actual work. Pick up the instrument and learn to play it.
It sounds like the secret isn't in the listening, it's in the engagement. Which brings me to a thought I want to leave everyone with as we close out today's deep dive.
Right, let's hear it.
If the Mozart effect is really just about mood and arousal, about waking your brain up with something you actively enjoy, then maybe we've been building the wrong pre-game playlist this entire time.
How so?
Well, if I personally hate classical music, forcing myself to listen to Mozart might actually bore my brain right to sleep before a big test. But if I love pop music, could listening to Taylor Swift or a heavy metal track right before a big meeting actually make me smarter in that specific moment than a symphony would?
Based on the enjoyment arousal theory? Absolutely, yes. If it gets your specific neurons firing and you feel good, it works.
There you have it. Don't force the Mozart if you're a Swiftie. Thanks for diving in with us, and we'll catch you on the next one.